few slides on here just to really keep me on track. But this is the first live we're doing in this community. Carly and I made a commitment to, once we hit 200 people in here, that we would start committing more time to doing more live stuff like this, or recorded stuff. So honestly, Will, obviously we were just talking, Michael, we just talked the other day. For you guys on this thing, like, I'd be selfish for whatever questions you have. Rob, obviously you as well too. At the end, I'll probably talk a little bit about like the nature of how the community works as well too. So I'll just kind of jump into my presentation. If you guys have questions, holler out, and I'll make sure I get them covered. Let me figure out how to present this thing. All right. So the topic we have today is to find your constraint and fix it. The thing that I find super interesting with this is that we went to Carly and I said Carly's our marketing manager, by the way, if you don't know. She'll be moderating on a lot of these different things. She also shares a lot of like what we do. Will, you mentioned the newsletter is how you found us. Carly's a good resource for marketing for us. But Carly and I, this was probably like 3 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. We went to Vegas to go to Alex Ramosey's acquisition.com's workshops. I'm not sure. Will, are you familiar with Alex Ramosey at all? I know Rob.
Yeah,
Rob
I am.
Cool.
Yeah, heard of him.
So we went out to the workshop. I saw an ad for it, booked it immediately. I'm like, okay, whatever. This has got to be good if the free stuff is as good as it is. So I'll give a really brief rundown. I think most people can Google and figure out who they are. But basically, it's a private equity firm, and they buy businesses or invest heavily in businesses with the sole intention of growing them, making them better. We were in a workshop with about 100 other business owners, all different levels. There was a lot of business owners that were in the like couple $100K a year revenue mark that were like starting. And there were a lot of people in the, like, Carly, I'd probably say like most people were probably like the 1 to 5 million revenue mark. And for reference, for my team, our team here, Onyx Homes, we did 3 million revenue last year. We're gonna do probably 4 million revenue this year. So we were like small in the room. And Carly sat next to a guy that owned like a $25 million golf course, was his business, something like crazy like that.
Yeah, he bought it. It was like it burnt down and he was rebuilding it, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting room. And obviously from acquisition.com, like they're a private equity firm, right? So this is like they're monetizing their lead generation, which is fantastic at $5,000 a head with 120 some odd people in there. They're just trying to figure out like which of the people in that room would be good businesses to buy. But anyway, very long story short, I was going to announce this at the end, but I might as well say this now, is not next Tuesday. I'm going to be out of town the Tuesday after that. So August 13th at noon, if you guys want to mark your calendar, we're going to put it in the community. Carly and I are going to go through like a full our takeaways from it. And we're going back again in October. And every 6 months for the next year, we're going back out there for them to take a deep dive on our business. We're gonna take all of our takeaways from the workshop that we went to, and we're gonna do it again after we come back from a like full 2-day deep dive on like our business specifically. But anyway, so that'll be on August 13th. That'll be in the community. I'm gonna do that at noon Pacific Standard. So anyway, the biggest thing they talked about was, and I got.
I think you're frozen.
I'll let him know. He's probably frozen from his side too.
Sometimes when you have too many tabs open in your computer, it kind of happens. Depends.
Sometimes his Wi-Fi isn't great at his house.
Oh, that could be it.
I just texted him. He'll be back. He might hop off and jump back on. Oh, you're back?
I'm back. I'm good. Looks like my internet just went down. I'm trying my hotspot. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah, you're a little spotty, but we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Wouldn't be a first rodeo if we didn't have tech issues, of course. Anyway, they run their entire business philosophy off of what they call the theory of constraints. Rob, you mentioned a book. I actually have it. I haven't started it yet. Of it being more of an engineering kind of philosophy, but we're going to talk about that. So we're going to talk about what it is, and then finding it in the real estate space, and fixing it, more importantly, and then like next steps in Q&A. Obviously the small group, it'll be heavy on the like the Q&A, making sure we're all on the same page. So um the theory of constraints, very very simply defined, is that any business, so your business as a salesperson or like business will grow up until it reaches its smallest constraint or largest constraint, however you want to look at that, right? I've always said this in sales, is like when I do a pipeline review with an agent, I always talk about what's the kink in the hose, right? You know, you got the hose, water's flowing, and the second you fold it in half, the water stops, or it stops go. It can't go any faster until you unconstrain that. So I got the visual for a hose here, right? So the idea is the business will grow up until the constraint is reached, and then it will stop growing. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to shrink, but that is at the point where the business no longer will continue to grow. And this is also true for sales, right? I mentioned when I do pipeline reviews, like my whole team knows, I just say, what is the kink in the hose? Where is the kink in the hose? And then we can talk about how to fix it, but identifying it first is the most important thing. And finding what the constraint is going to depend. So like Will, you mentioned you're a solo agent, individual agent with some admin support, right? So your constraint is going to be very different than like Rob is an agent on our team that is newer to the business, totally different constraints for sure. And then like me and Carly here from like the leadership or admin running our team, because like I'm not selling it all for reference, Will, is the constraints totally different. And the thing that is, once you fix the constraint, you're going to continue to grow until you find a different constraint. And it might be the same one, just needs to get bigger, but it's probably going to be something else. And they could not have emphasized this enough, was finding the constraint was the absolute number one most important thing to do in your business. And then from there is, don't let another day go by where you're not allocating as many resources as possible to solving that constraint. So that was the big thing that Carly and I looked at each other and were like, oh shit, like all of the time that we're spending doing not that was like, maybe not wasted time, but like definitely not time spent in the best area. And I'm going to talk way more about this next time we meet on the 13th, of like the takeaways. But a little nugget, kind of future pacing for that, was they look at the CEOs of all their portfolio companies and other companies outside of that, and they kind of define the best CEOs as being very good investors, right? So thinking of investor meaning, as the CEO of your business, even as a salesperson, like investing your time and resources the best. And once you've found your constraint, doing everything you possibly can to fix that constraint is the only thing you should be focusing on. Meaning, like, obviously, you still have to do your job, you still have to do deals and make money and all of that stuff. But as far as working on the business, it should literally be like the only thing that you do. Another pro tip, this is also kind of future pacing for it, but like my biggest like kick in the gut takeaway from this was that most of the companies they buy, they ask the question, why can't we 10x the business? And if they didn't have a logical reason why they can't 10x the business, they just do 10 times more of what they're already doing. Which again, for salespeople, like probably not. I know, definitely know not for Rob. Will, I don't know you too well yet, but I don't know about you, but like so many agents out there, salespeople, whatever, like just doing 2x or 10x more, there's no constraint. It's just not doing it. Like most people just aren't doing nearly enough work to hit their goals. We see that with the team all the time. We see that with agents all over the place. I'm going to Tom Ferry with Carly and a lot of the teammates in a couple of weeks, and like that's usually the same problem for agents at all levels. Is like if you could just do more, you don't really need to recreate the wheel, right? That was kind of that was the biggest like gut punch pro tip that I got from being there. Paid a lot of money just to be told to work harder, but work harder on the right things. Like that was the big thing for us. Okay, so that is explaining like what the theory of constraint is. Let's talk about finding it. So I talk about this all the time. Rob's probably sick of hearing me talk about top, middle, and bottom of funnel. We just did this an hour ago, but I think most people, especially you guys on here, understand the idea of top, middle, and bottom of funnel. And then I put the pro tip on here of like the real goal should be for agents to be spending 80% of their time with all bottom of funnel leads. And the only way you really get there is by having a large funnel, right? So like I think we all understand the concept of what a funnel is. But what I've found is talking to a lot of different agents and pipeline reviews and all this stuff, and even looking at teams pipelines. Our pipeline is for our team here at Onyx Homes. It's really hard to say like we have a top of funnel problem. We have a really hard time at the top of funnel nurturing leads. That's like a hard problem to solve. Middle of funnel, I define that as having conversations, setting appointments, meeting new people. It's really hard to define where the problem is if you just say middle of funnel. And then bottom of funnel, what I call it with our team, is really just consultation and contracts. Is like doing deals at that bottom of funnel. So if you look at it like this, in my opinion, what I've learned is it's really hard to like really identify on the actual constraint of what you should fix. And this is kind of marrying in how I've always looked at sales pipeline, sales management, and marrying in what we learned at this workshop. So I redid the sales funnel, and I did it on the actual points. Now, if you've watched any of Alex Ramosey's content, he breaks things down just like this as well too, which is obviously what gave me the idea for it. Is he will go from lead received to scheduled appointment to shown up appointment to did we offer them the service to did they say yes to it to, right? Like they take every individual like chunk of the sale and they look at the stats and the data on all of those different things. So we basically just did the same thing with the real estate sales process. So this is what we came up with. It was inside of the top of the funnel, you have generating leads. And then from generating leads, you have conversations, you have appointments. And then the middle of funnel, you have asking for consultations. Then you have doing consultations, meaning they said yes, and then showed up and did it. And then asking for an agreement to be signed, whether it be a listing agreement or a buyer agreement, which is more prevalent now than it ever has been. And then at the bottom of funnel is getting the actual agreement signed and then doing the deal, offers, listings, escrow, so on. Now from here, you look at like as a real estate salesperson, look at this and you might think, and I'm guilty of this as well too, is like, well, I've got a leads problem and a doing consults problem. The point of the theory of constraints that they really focus on is what is the biggest constraint? Not, well, I can improve on my appointment setting, but I can also improve on the consultation. I can also improve on like, what is the number one biggest problem? And only focus the resources on that first. So that's kind of the process for finding the constraint. And then I'll walk through like the ideas behind fixing them. So if your constraint is in the top of the funnel, and Will, Rob, or Michael too, I'm not sure if you're there because your camera's off, but if you guys want to jump in and like be selfish because it's a small group and talk through these, I'd be totally happy to. And I'll be transparent first from our team's perspective. Is we went into this workshop with the expectation, because they asked us what do we feel like the biggest constraint is in the business before we got there, right? If you only asked Alex one question, what would you ask? And I answered about 15 of my own questions before we even found the question that I actually wanted to ask. We went into this thinking that our major lead source is about 40% of our business comes from Zillow, and Carly and we don't have control over the lead volume. Carly and I went in thinking that that was the number one constraint on the business, is that we are channel dependent upon one. We have other channels, obviously, but we do have one outlier lead source. No worry, Michael, you're good. Leads are the biggest constraint. Cool. So our constraint after going through all of this was when we asked each other the question, when we asked ourselves, what is stopping us from 10xing the business? What's stopping us from going 3 million in revenue to 30 million in revenue? And when we realized, going in thinking that like Zillow was the constraint, we realized, well, just making it as simple as possible. If Zillow sent us 10 times more leads, we would figure it out. We would hire more admin to support more agents coming on to handle more lead volume. We would convert at the same rate. We'd follow the same processes. Like, that would no longer be the constraint. So the question for us was a big fat kick in the gut, like I mentioned earlier, of like, we just need to do, we need 10 times more lead volume to flow through the system. So Michael, your point, totally different scale, right? Or solo, like you guys are a husband-wife team versus a team, having the same constraint on just like totally different levels. You know, we generate hundreds of leads every single month and still have a leads problem. I think that's the biggest constraint for the business, right? For us personally. So my point is, if you feel like your constraints at the top of the funnel, if it's lead generation, there's a million different ways to solve it. For us, it meant hiring an outside agency that really knows how to run paid ads and like biting the bullet that it's going to be fucking expensive, and spending money and realizing it's going to take a year. Like Carly and I, she knows, like Carly wants to punch me in my face every time I'm like, hey, let's stop doing that. Let's do this. I just committed to like, we're going to spend a shit ton of money on the retainer for this agency every single month. And then we're just going to blow cash to find the thing that works. Because if we're able to 10x ad spend, 10x lead generation, we are confident, Rob could probably testify to this, that we would just do more deals, period. So that's what we're focused on. That's been quite literally our only focus for the last, 90 days since we got back from this workshop. All right, now I'll zoom back in for an individual agent's perspective, or individual with admin, is like, if you have a lead generation problem, Michael said this, Rob, we just talked about this yesterday, is if you have a lead generation problem, there's 100 different ways to generate leads in this business. You either sweat equity, you're cold calling, door knocking, open houses, whatever, or you're check equity and you're writing a check to buy leads to flow through the system, right? And you just one or the other. If leads is the problem, all of the focus should be towards generating leads. I don't even care about converting leads until you have fixed the lead generation problem, right? Now, if you are generating leads, let's chunk down one notch. If you are generating leads and you're not getting anybody on the phone, or you're not getting anybody to engage, whatever the lead source is, right? Conversations is probably the problem, whether they're in person or on the phone, whatever it might be. How do we get these people from, okay, we're generating leads through maybe a paid lead source. How in the world do we get them on the phone? And if you're generating leads and you can't get them on the phone, all of the focus moves to, how do we get these people? How do we have conversations with these people? However it might be. Maybe it's changing the process. Maybe it's changing the script. Maybe it's fixing the lead generation isn't as high quality as we thought it was. Maybe we're getting bad information from whoever, whatever it might be. Same thing with appointments. So my little bullet points over here on the left is, if lead generation is a problem, market more. Or the third bullet point is do more. So like, market more is break out the credit card and start spending money. And then do more is we know open houses generate leads. We know cold calling, door knocking, and all of those things generate leads. Just find the one that you like or hate the least or like the most and do it, and probably need to do more of it if lead generation is the problem. And then the third option is what I'm very obviously bullish on, biased, is teams. I don't blame anybody for not wanting to break out the credit card and spend $100,000 a month to run a team to generate hundreds of leads a month. Joining one is a very cost-effective way to kickstart, restart that. So if your problem is top of funnel, the training that I built on this is the closer framework in the classroom. At the end of this, I'm going to do a quick like demo on School. If you're not familiar with the platform, think of the classroom as like courses. The closer framework is a how to set more appointments, how to have better conversations type of training. All right, so there's that. Any questions on that before I move on, since we do have a small group here and you guys can be selfish?
No, I mean, I guess one of the questions that I have is, as an individual agent, I'm not paying Zillow for a big chunk of my leads.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're just paying Zillow for individual leads or you're part of their program where you get all of those leads in the area. Are you on Flex?
We are on Flex, yeah.
Yeah. So you get a ton of leads given to you in that program, which is awesome. The thing of it is if I was on Zillow Flex, I wouldn't get it because I'm not on a team. But even if I turned on a lot of these leads, it's how to manage all that as a single agent. It'd be hard to get back to all of them actually.
Yeah. For sure.
But my problem when I look at that funnel is appointments. I need to go on more appointments.
Okay.
But how do you get more appointments? Well, you got to have more leads, which create more conversations, which create appointments. So I see how it all funnels. I get that. But, even in my sphere of people that I work on, I know I have to get in front of them more and have appointments. And that's what I'm focusing on a lot more this year.
Okay, cool. So you hit on a point we say the same thing all the time and this was honestly that conversation or that like what you just said for us changed after this workshop, which was well worth the money. So I hope I can articulate what our takeaway was with that is, and we've done this a ton, is like, I'll explain it through recruiting. So we knew we could recruit agents to the team. And like we knew it happened, right? Like you mentioned, Will, you're a successful agent. And it sounds like you want to raise that level of success, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were recruiting agents. We wanted to recruit more agents, right? We knew we could do it. We didn't really know what more looked like. And we started asking like, okay, what is going to break when we start recruiting more agents? Like that was our mindset. And then we went to this workshop and then we just recruited more agents and found out what broke. Right. And we found out it wasn't my time. It wasn't which is what we thought it was going to be. Like, how do we copy and paste me? We found out it was literally just the paperwork and the onboarding. So we hired an assistant and it was like, thank God we hired Allie. But like, it was the easiest fix and it was fixed in 2 weeks and it allowed us to double our lead flow, if you will. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Appointments doubled, lead flow doubled, and the constraint was an admin person to make it all sing, to make it happen. So bringing this back to like salesperson is if you just like didn't change anything about what you're doing, Will, is if you doubled the amount of leads you had coming in, do you think you'd set more appointments?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Or because it's never yes or no, right? Or if you got better at setting appointments, would you set more appointments to leads you already have? Right. So like the question is, do you need to get better at setting appointments or do you need just more leads?
Right.
Like more opportunities, right, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would think through that is like, well, I mean, you know your business better than anybody. Like literally the best, I don't know how much Alex Ramos you watch, but like me and Rob like geek out over this guy all the time. When they asked the question on like the form that I filled out before we went, and it was like, if you could only ask him one question, what would you ask? Like you are your best coach by a mile because you know everything about you and you know everything about your business. So when I sat there and I was like, okay, here's the question. And I'm like, I know what he would say. Like, that's a stupid question. Okay, problem solved. Move on. Next question. Like, I know what he would say to that too. He would say just like do more or whatever, right? Like that. So for you so far in this conversation, if that's your constraint, I would figure out like, do I just need more leads? Or is it I need to work on like getting better at setting the appointments, mm-hmm. right? That'd be like the only thing that I'd focus on until you know what it is, honestly.
Right.
And that's what we did for like a month after we got back from the workshop and we landed on, if we had 10x more leads, we would do more deals, and we'd figure out what broke. Would it be we don't have enough agents, and like we don't even need to know what would break next, because it'll break, and we'll know what the next constraint is. Going back to finding it, leads won't be the constraint anymore. If Zillow sent us 10 times more leads, we'd find out real quick what the next constraint was. Same thing like we did with recruiting. Cool. So that's the top. Middle of funnel, I look at it like this: is if you are, and I'll use you as an example here just to talk through it again, but you are doing deals, right? So like, if you obviously are generating leads, you're having conversations, you're having appointments. This is where, especially in the sales process, so like on the left side over here, the bullet points are leveling up your sales process, which for right now in the next 2 weeks, especially here in California, our sales process is also in the classroom, right? And there's a reason why there's a training on each of the 3 chunks of the funnel. But it's really, really hard to do consultations like listing appointments or buyer strategy sessions, as we call them, or buyer's consults, if you don't ask for them, right? So for some agents, the constraint's literally just they're afraid to ask for the consult. Crazy as that is, that is a real deal. If they're asking for them, are they doing them? Meaning, are they getting the consumer to say yes? And are they showing up and doing them? And if they're showing up and doing them, at what ratio? Like, what does that look like? Is it 1 out of 10? Is it 50%? For reference, our agents that are bought into the sales process, Rob, it's about half of the people that you ask to do a consult are actually doing a consult. And then from there, if you're doing consults, are you asking to get an agreement signed? Now, we're not really going to have much of a choice here in the next 2 weeks, but one of the biggest constraints for a lot of the agents on our team is that they were either not asking for consults or not even asking for the agreement. It was for a lot of agents, it was one of those 2 things. And for here, I think it's just sales process, right? You could go straight from appointments down to signed agreements. I can't even shout this from the rooftops loud enough right now. I strongly feel that with a better sales process, you'll get more agreements signed more often. And as a side note, on the buyer side especially, it's always been like this for listings. If you have a better consult process and a better sales process, you're going to get them signed more often and at a higher fee. Yeah. So that's the middle, is I think all about sales process. And then bottom is once you have the agreement signed, listing agreement, buyer agreement, whatever. If your problem is, hey, I'm not getting agreement signed, I mean, you're going on listing appointments, you're going on buyer consults, and you're just not getting the contract signed, it's just getting great at your consults is a huge, huge, huge part of it. And then closing is like I don't know, fancy term, but like the reality is, how I look at closing, especially in the real estate space, because I look at us as consultants more than salespeople, or the perception should be we're consultants, more of consultants, less of salespeople, is the consult, no pun intended, is incredibly important. And then just being comfortable being uncomfortable is the second thing. Like there's not like the sexy one-liners they have in movies for closing. It's like, if your consult sucked, I don't care how good your one-liner is, you're not closing that deal. If your listing presentation was terrible, they're not signing with you. If your listing presentation crushes and it solves all their problems and concerns, and you ask them like, do you want to work together? And that's your crushing line. Most of the time they're going to say yes if you have a really, really, really good presentation. And then if they say no and you ask why, that's the getting uncomfortable part. So I have again on the left side here, in the classroom of this community, I have our entire buyer strategy session put in there, literally the entire script, along with me walking through the entire thing. I'm going to be tweaking that as well too as these changes come through. I'll probably not redo the whole thing, but I'll do in addition to with like the adjustments there as well too. So walking through this whole thing, I think that's my last slide on this. Walking through this whole thing, Rob, we talked yesterday. Will, if you want to chime in, Michael, if you want to chime in as well too. What would you guys individually say is the number one constraint in the business right now?
I think right now for me is this morning I was working on this, is having to ask for the consult, because a lot of my buyers that I'm working with are in various stages. They're kind of like waiting for the one to. There's some that are waiting for the one to show up. There's some that are gung ho, and there's some that are like a little bit further out. But my point is, like, I want to get in front of all of them to get the buyer broker agreement signed. That way it's done, and that way, if by chance they get it in front of another agent, I'm not out of luck. Because if they sign with somebody else, typically it's going to be a 90-day commitment. Hopefully it draws up hopefully if any of my buyers right now say, if an agent asks them to sign something, they would come to me and say, what am I signing? They go to me first, but you just never know in certain situations when houses come up and buyers jump without thinking straight and they forget about you, So what I'm working on right now is asking for those consults to get them, either meet them at their local Starbucks, come here to my office, and let's go over what's changing and what this form is that you're signing, and what it means. So that's my big hang up right now.
So is having the process around asking for the consult is like, that's the number one thing right now. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah. And the importance of it, like, I have a buyer that I just asked yesterday that I need to. I've shown them property once, met them at an open house, shown them property once. They've actually, and then they like went off the grid for a while, and they came back to me and wanted to show property again. I showed them property a second time, and now I'm like, okay, we need to get in my office to do a buyer strategy session, and I can't get them. They're just too busy to sit down. They don't know the importance of it. Of course, we do, because once you sit down with them, it's like 85% of the time after you do that, they're your client, that's secured. But now even more so, I want to make sure that I do my job and I follow these new requirements of, because you really shouldn't be doing any kind of agency work for them. That means looking up properties, like not just touring homes. If you read the contract, it's agent related work. So without an agreement,
sure,
so.
Yeah, well, I have the sales. Have you gone through the sales process training by chance that we have in that classroom?
I haven't had a chance yet. No.
Yeah, I would check it out, and I'll kind of like I'll screen share and like walk you through like how to operate everything. But that would be like that was our solution to like what you just said. But to the point of the constraint is like I wouldn't. I mean, obviously you got to do your job, make money, sell houses, right? Any extra time is figuring out how am I going to do that? Like, what's my process going to be? That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
Rob, what about you? Did you?
Yeah,
I know
like
we just talked yesterday, but
yeah, like we were talking about today, just speed to lead. Also, like speed to conversion, we've got about 72 hours.
Yeah. So where would that fall in here?
From first time you met. So you meet them at an open house. You want to try and get in front of them with a buyer consult within about 72 hours.
Yep, 100%. So that's probably which yours has changed too, and even in the last 30 days. But I would say your conversation point, right? Like that sticking point. We can set appointments, but I guess meeting them on those and then figuring out what that is, which obviously we just talked a ton about that today. Michael, you there? Do you want to chime in, or I can move on if you're not able to? I saw a text earlier.
He doesn't have a mic or a camera, so he'll just be.
Gotcha. We're good.
If he has anything.
Awesome. Thank you, Carly. Okay, cool. So as far as next steps and then Q&A, let me see if I can figure out how to share this tab instead. Cool. So I'll do Q&A. Before I do the Q&A, I want to give you guys kind of a walkthrough through this community on the school platform. So this is pretty straightforward. Where you'll this will look like a Facebook group if you've ever been in this. This is kind of the community portion of it, right? So from here on out, there's another fun portion of this called the leaderboard. And as you'll see, there's levels to this community. So like the more you actually engage with the community, there's like a point system, which is kind of fun. And you start unlocking more and more stuff. So the higher level stuff will put behind the more engaged people in the community. And as this thing grows, as a side note as well too, I know Michael mentioned lead generation. we have a advertising campaign that's going to be going to this community, probably starting honestly this week, next week. So I imagine we're going to see a pretty large inflow of people as well too. That obviously, as the community grows, there's going to be more engagement in there. Obviously, with 200 people in here, we're not having a ton of engagement yet, but I think that'll change as well. So, like Will, for example, if you have, hey, I'm working on my sales process. What do you think about this? You can come in here and just write, like, think of it like a Facebook wall post or whatever. Like, you can write a little thing like, here's what I'm thinking. What are your thought process? Whatever. Like, I'll give you my word that like I'm going to respond to everything in here. Rob, Michael, you guys can chime in whenever you want. Obviously, Carly's in here a lot as well too, making sure we're talking about different things. This is where, obviously, other than my team members, this is where like I'm going to be the most active on like responding to stuff on here. So that's the community. You can tag people, you do whatever. Carly, I need a little banner here. The start here post is just reminding you how to start in the community. So the classroom is the courses that I mentioned. So as of right now, we have the, let me make this a little bit smaller. We have the 3 major trainings. So we have the closer framework. So if your top of funnel problem is your constraint, then closer framework is going to help you get better on the phone, get better in person, ask the right questions, and removing sales-based questions from your vocabulary and moving more to a question-based selling and then consultative approach. This is like how I talk to people on the phone, how I set more appointments. There's a little bit, there's a little bit of the sales process in that one, just for a heads up on like the selling portion. The Onyx sales process is the like exact training that I have for our team, that on how we go from we just received a lead to getting in front of them for a consult and then getting the next step set up. So that might, like, those 2 things would probably be the best to like resources from exactly what we do to help like mold whatever you come up with yours. Obviously, learning about our teams on here, but the buyer strategy session training here is like our full blown consult. So for reference on this, like the buyer strategy session is an hour and 30-minute training of me walking through the doc. And then these docs, like this particular one, I don't remember how many pages this is, but this is the entire process with a just ton of information, even to the point of like I wrote down exactly what I would say on every single slide. And each one of these slides, I believe, links back to the video. So,
yeah, it does. And it's about 30 to 35 pages, I think.
This one literally took me like 28 hours to put this just raw text together. And then obviously filming it was pretty straightforward because I was just walking through the doc itself. But all of these are like very in-depth trainings. I'm going to have more adding in here as I go. But honestly, with the engagement in the community, like I know what my team asks for and wants, but I also want to figure out what the other people in the community want. So for anybody that's going to watch this on the replay, like comment on this post the different types of things you actually want to hear about. Carly and I got pretty clear this week on the things that we're going to be focusing on, and it's sales, marketing, and leadership. Like those are really the only 3 things we're really going to focus on too much in this community. I mean, I'm a sales and marketing guy. Carly's obviously marketing, and I'm big on leadership, vision, business planning, stuff like that. But yeah, that is the little rundown. It's pretty straightforward. So you've got the community, you got the classroom for the courses. Obviously, all this stuff's free in here. And then the calendar is going to show you what's happening in this community and when. And then you have the leaderboard to see who's doing what, who's all active. So I'll go ahead and stop my screen. I got 16 minutes left. If you guys want to Q&A, if you want to hop off, whatever you guys want to do, I'm here for you. What do you guys think? I'm curious, Rob. You've heard a lot of obviously stuff from me. I did our brain dump from the acquisition workshop. What did you think of this versus what we had talked about before?
It's really good. The Theory of Constraints, the book, is kind of focused on manufacturing, and I think the illustration is kind of easy to look at when you see that way. So say you've got a garment manufacturing company You've got fabric cutters, you've got sewing machines, you've got the shipping department. Say sewing can produce 1,000 units a day, say shipping can ship 1,500, but cutting can only do 500. So that's the constraint. So to add more sewing machines or to hire more people in shipping makes absolutely no sense. You've got to focus on the whatever throughput the bottleneck can produce is the one that needs to be opened up before you look at anything else.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And it's just harder, I think, in sales.
Yeah, it's maybe a
Plus
little
you
bit harder to kind of find exactly where your constraint is, but if you can find it, then for sure that's where the focus needs to go.
I think a big part of it as well too is it comes down to tracking, right? Like Rob showed me a spreadsheet yesterday of tracking like almost everything you could track between new lead and closed, as far as like responses, not responding, not responding to text, call, email, setting appointments, meeting appointments, consult book, consult set, so on and so on, right? The more data you have, obviously, the easier it is, right? Do you use a CRM by chance, Will?
Yes.
Thank God.
Yeah. It's owned by
like,
Zillow, but it's still pretty good. I think you know which one I'm using. Follow Up Boss.
Follow Up Boss is fantastic. That's good. That's what we use too.
Yeah.
Any real estate specific CRM that sells for $500 million must be the best if Zillow's buying them.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, we look a lot at calls. How many calls do you have to make? Like I've got a goal setting worksheet. Carly, that's a reminder too. We need to make that like a lead magnet type deal. Just giving you homework while I'm doing this. It takes like how many phone calls do you need to make in order to have a conversation? How many conversations do you need to have in order to set an appointment? And then we look at how many appointments do you need to set in order to close a deal, right? So like we can look at that as far as constraints. Like if it takes Rob 7,000 appointments to sell a house, like that's probably the problem. Somewhere in that appointment process is going to be the issue. And we focus on it that way. That's really like the easiest way we can track data is calls, conversations, appointments, deals. If you have more steps in between, which the funnel does, of like might be going on a ton of appointments, but are you asking for consults? Are you asking for agreements? Figuring out where that thing is. That little graphic that I put together on Canva was the easiest way for me to walk through with an agent and figure out what that actual problem was.
Now, do you also look at the reporting inside of the CRM to see where you can tweak things or how to follow the graphs on how your business can grow if you make some adjustments? Because I don't do a lot of the back end stuff on Follow Up Boss. I know there's a lot of reporting features. Do you go pretty granular into that?
I'll say yes and no. I look at it like Rob and I did a one-on-one yesterday, and we pulled it up for Rob because it was like he's in a position where he's switching a lead pillar from calling into our database to outbound prospecting, trying to generate more seller-focused business, right? So we were looking at, okay, what is the relation for Rob? We look at like how many new leads did he generate? How many appointments did he go on? And we can look at the chart of like, if you make more I'm going the wrong way. If you make more phone calls, you also set more appointments. And then the second your phone calls go down, your appointments also go down. And that's something that just like for 95% of real estate agents, we see the literal, as somebody makes more phone calls, they set more appointments. Or you could also look at it like, well, this might be interesting for you to look at is look at your leads to appointments or leads to close deals, right? Because your initial reaction was like, oh, maybe it's a lead gen problem, or maybe it's an appointment closing problem, whatever it might be. I look at those things only on one-on-ones with agents, right? So like you being obviously a solo agent, looking at your own numbers, I would definitely recommend looking at that. Maybe I should make a video on like how I do that, using Follow Up Boss as a tool as well.
Yeah. I'm also curious, like what lead platforms to move leads into that. So I have a website, or I have Real Scout that leads fall into there. when I'm making my calls on Mojo, leads fall into there. But what other ways I can get leads to fall into Follow Up Boss? Because I don't do Zillow. I know Zillow is one way, but just all the ways you can put the leads in there. They keep bringing leads, new contact, leads, conversations, appointments. That's what I focus on half the day. And then when I get listings, I focus on how do I make more listings from those listings, because it's so hard to get a listing, and then you do a great job for the seller. You sell it for a great price. Everybody's happy. And then once it's closed, you're like, hey, it's like, now what? I want to get more from that lead, from that listing, because listings are gold, So I guess my other issue is like having my operations lined around where I do it every time, no matter what. Like, I don't care if I don't want to create a postcard for just sold. You're going to do a just sold postcard. Even if nobody responds to the last one, you're still going to do it, because it's the cadence. It's that you just got to do it. You never know. The phone somebody may respond to that postcard, or you might blow $500, $600, so and your time designing it.
Totally. So I have like my initial feedback on that is, do you have anything that you do that generates leads that works? That might sound like a stupid question, but like, do you have a lead generation thing that works for you right now?
It's all hard. It's all work that I do for free, basically, like working open houses. I always attract buyers at open houses. It's doing some door knocking, but usually it's passing a flyer out and getting face to face with somebody. It's calling my past clients, asking for referrals. Like, a lot of stuff I do is relatively inexpensive. You bringing up the big bucks and hiring an agency that brings leads in is a whole different level that I haven't considered yet.
And I don't, like, for the record, I don't think you should.
Okay.
When I said sweat equity versus check equity, like, you and I are running wildly different business models. When you said a wildly profitable business, like, we're lucky to run 10, 15, like, I do double backflips if we hit a 20% profit margin. You know what I mean? So they're just totally different models. With, I imagine, different visions in line as well too, right?
Sure.
Which that's a whole nother conversation. But the reason I asked that question,
that's a long dinner conversation. That's
right.
I mean, anyway,
but the reason that I asked that question is if you like, oftentimes, like you said, open houses was the first thing you said, right? So like the gut reaction is like, can we do more open houses, right? Because that's free. I love free's great. And then if you can't do, so here's because you stayed this whole time and have participated, this is another nugget that I'll share from the workshop was, and this is in Alex's videos, but like, this is literally how they do everything, is the framework of more, better, new, right? So like, okay, open houses work. Can we do more open houses? If yes, do more open houses. Okay, you can't do any more open houses. You're tapped out on open houses. Okay, can you do them better to get more leads that generate more business? That do, like Rob and I were talking about. He asked, I'm like, how do I get more people to the open house? I'm like, how many signs are you putting out? Can you do more open houses? He's doing them every Saturday, Sunday. Great. Okay, let's talk about better now. Right? You could do them every day of the week. Maybe not the best use of your time, but it's possible. Then you talk about better, like how many signs are you putting out? Right? If you're putting out 6 signs, it's like, we'll put out 30. Right? What time do you put them out? Right before the open house. We'll do it at 8 a.m. Right? Put a sign at the front door. It's like, sorry, open house is until noon. Like, you're going to call me for early access, God forbid. Lead. Right? That's better. Right? So they think through everything as more, better, new. So if the thought process is, can you do more open house? Obviously, this is simplified, but can you do more open houses? If no, great, good for you. Can you do them better? The answer is almost always yes. And if you can't do any more, any better, like, okay, if you're doing that maxed out, the best of your ability, now we add something new. Which is why I say don't go hire an agency. We've been through, oh my God, Carly, we've probably been through a dozen and lost money on a dozen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not
So
one
now-
has been successful. So except the one we're using now.
So if you
We'll
lost
see.
money on a dozen, you're on number 13. How did you find number 13, and do you even know if that's going to pay off yet?
I don't know if it's going to pay off. I found them through a Facebook ad. So they ought to be good. If their Facebook ad funnel was very good, so I was like, I might as well jump on a call. And I was blown away by guess what? Blown away by the consultation, then wrote a big fat check and to hire them. Right? Like, just like all the changes we're talking about. It's the reason I'm kind of making a joke at that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work. Like, I'm spending $5,000 a month on the retainer to just employ these people. And we're, our ad spend several $1,000s a month and growing on there as well too. So we're in probably damn near $10,000 a month right now.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's going to work. Do I know if it's going to generate leads or not? Yes. Right. So like I'll walk you through. I'll be respectful of everybody's time for a few more minutes, but alternatively, right? If I know my constraints leads, right? If we like forget Zillow, right? If I 10x lead flow through my team, we would do more deals. Period. Right? Our team knows how to convert leads. So if we 10x lead flow, what would break next? I don't know. No idea. Probably our agents wouldn't be able to answer the phone enough. And then I can fix that problem. But is this going to work or not? I'm not 100% sure. But the question, the question they asked us at the workshop is like, would it be worth a year and a year's worth of profits to 10x the business or to double the business or to fix the constraint? And we're like, yeah, for sure it would. So like, what if it doesn't work? I set aside enough brain damage and money to be like, if this doesn't work, it's going to cost $100,000, and that sucks. If it does work, it might triple, quadruple, 10x the business.
Yeah.
Is that a investment that's worth it? Because the other question was, I pull Carly off of everything she does, and she has to learn how to do something that's not her wheelhouse. Like Carly, all the newsletter, that's like the stuff that got you into this world. That's what Carly's good at. Carly, like her wheelhouse, she'll be the first one to say is like not paid ads. I can watch a million YouTube videos, but like, do I pull myself out of? I'm a salesperson, right? I'm a sales guy. Sales training leadership is what I do really good at. Like I like marketing, but would I take myself off of what I'm best at to learn paid ads, or do we hire this agency to do it?
Right.
So like that's kind of the thought process of talking through those things. But anyway, to like, don't go hire somebody. Don't go break out the credit card if you don't need to. Like if open houses works, great. More, better, new.
Well, I think going back
better.
to just what you mentioned about your newsletter, it's really, really good. And I don't know if Carly's writing most of it and you're kind of giving her some guidance, but it sounds like you're talking, Christian. So whatever you guys have going on there is very well done, because it's very transparent. I feel like from an agent to agent that you're in the trenches with us, and what you're saying is relevant. And it's very difficult to find a relevant newsletter that you don't want to hit unsubscribe on quickly. So to get past that,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, totally. Just being honest, because like I'm a busy agent and I get a lot of emails, and I easily get rid of the ones that I don't want to read, so because time is valuable. So your content and when your messaging is good. So, and it's also it's also in tune with like what's happening in the market. And I like when you go over like the numbers, and your market's Orange County, and I read that even though I'm in LA County, the counties are kind of similar, with what's happening here is happening there. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're on both newsletters, right? So I have one that's agent facing, one that's consumer facing.
I guess so. Yeah.
If you have, what's your database size?
700.
Okay. I write my newsletter every Tuesday, every Monday. I've got my first 3 hours of the day roughly blocked out to write the newsletter. And I talk about what is the most important thing going on in the business right now. If Rob asks me a burning question, other agents have that question as well too, right? So that's the newsletter for the agents. And then consumer facing, it's like, what do I feel like consumers, like if I'm talking to consumers right now, what's the conversation I ought to be having? That's the newsletter. And we started our newsletter about a year and a half ago, sending it to like, I don't know, probably 1,000 people. And now we went up to like, we had 16,000 people on it one time. And now we have like 10 or 11,000 like engaged subscribers to the consumer newsletter.
Yeah,
So, and this is me talking about like, go ahead, Carly.
I was gonna say we have about 11,000 subscribers. We get about 45% open rates and 1 to 2% click rate.
That's huge numbers. Huge.
And it's just, we used to send like the pretty newsletter. It would be like a 12% open rate, a 0% click rate. And as soon as we switched to add value, because that's what we saw people doing in every industry, it changed completely.
Yeah. Well, that's another topic that if you want to share info on and how you grew that, that's a pretty powerful story there, because my newsletter, I'm doing it monthly, and I tried it for this month. I'm doing videos now, like an introductory video. And in the video at the end of it, I said, you know, school starts again this month already. And what I would like to do for those who got this far in the video, I'm going to give out 5 gift cards to Office Depot for $20 each for your children. If you got this far, just message me and I'll shoot that out. I got no messages yet, so no one's getting that far in the video.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but I'm testing, you know. So I'm trying to see who's actually watching.
That's why I started with, we've been doing the newsletter for a year and a half, and it looked like a pretty graphic-y horseshit email in the beginning, and now, as you know, it's text. And the ones that don't have a thumbnail video of like me, like when I can't film a video because I'm out of town or whatever, like those emails work just as well as the ones in videos do. Some people just prefer
better, I think, actually.
Wow,
great. Yeah, thanks, Carly. I'll stop making video.
Well, we have to grow our YouTube channel, so.
But anyway, email crushes. Like you should be. I would just start emailing once a week.
Okay, but then again, how do I grow that list? Like that's the next topic that I'd like to figure out. You know.
Yeah. So the like the whole point of this today is like, if you're a constraint, like figure out what that thing is. If it's lead gen, that's what we focus on, and like growing your database is lead gen, right? If it's sales process, forget the freaking newsletter, or changing it at least until we've got that sales process dialed. And then when there's when constraint comes back to lead gen, now we talk about, you know what I mean? Like that was the biggest takeaway we had from this. Cause like I get shiny penny, whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, Carly used to kill me when we go to these Tom Ferry conferences, come back with like 97 new, objectives. And now I go with my earplugs in and I'm like, I'm listening for maybe one thing to maybe do next year.
Well, I will see you there at the end of this month. I'm going to be there too.
I knew it. I had a feeling you'd be there.
Yeah. Well, look what's right there behind me, man. I don't know if you can see that. It's a freaking
buffalo. Bison.
That's
awesome.
Bison, man. Let's go.
That's so fun. I love that.
Yeah.
Go, man. Rob, are you going? Oh, lame.
No, I'm not going this time.
Lame. Well, we'll see you there, Will.
All right.
All right, guys. I'm gonna hop off. But yeah, in the community, like get active in the community. I know it's a little dead now, but this is gonna be the beginning to it. And I think we're gonna have a lot of people joining in. We'll find out very quickly how good this agency is at getting people to sign up for this. But we're making a huge push on content as well too, if you haven't already seen that. So appreciate you guys showing up, and I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks, guys.